has been leaked via the underworld grapevine.
Welcome to What Gear Reviews, you legendary Sony fans, and word has been leaked via the underworld grapevine that we will be seeing the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II later this year. And word on the street is we should see this phone announced around September, usually around the time when the Berlin IFA would take place, but something tells me the Berlin IFA isn't going to happen this year. So if you're wondering about the release date of the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II, it's most likely going to be around October, announced in September. So while the details around this phone have been quite scarce recently, there has been a little bit of information out there, and that's what we're going to get into today, and some of the predicted stuff that we can be almost certain we're going to see on this smaller version of Sony's flagship in 2020. So first, Sony brought back the headphone jack. And now, word on the street is Sony are bringing back the Compact.
Actually, I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
And for their next trick, let's hope they can deliver a Sony Walkman DAC. But I get a feeling that's not going to happen in this one. Maybe next year. So the rumors suggest that this phone could be as small as 5.6 inches on the diagonal when it comes to the display. But it's more likely to be around about 5.8 inches on the diagonal. But no matter which way you slice it, this phone is going to be compact. And if they literally just scale down the dimensions of the Xperia 1, the actual width of the screen, being a 21:9 display, will be just 65 millimeters wide. Now, I've heard people complaining, saying if they go too thin, it's going to be like a Hershey's chocolate bar. But I personally think that if they go that small, it'll actually make one-handed use very, very easy. And as well as that, it's going to make the phone way more grippable, so you're much less likely to drop the phone and break it. Now, when it comes to the resolution of the screen, honestly, if they're going to go that small with the display, Full HD Plus should be quite satisfactory. And it's almost 100% going to be an OLED and support HDR and Sony's creator mode when it comes to color reproduction. But I really hope that Sony splash out a little bit of cash and go for a 120Hz display, especially if it's going to be 1080p, because that kind of is what we expect this year when it comes to flagship smartphones. I know this isn't the top tier flagship, but it is going to be a flagship in its own category of compact devices. So let me know what you think. Do you want a 120Hz display on the new Sony Xperia 5 Mark II? So the fact that the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II will be more compact than the Xperia 1 Mark II will result in a slightly smaller battery, but with it having a smaller display, therefore it doesn't need to have as much power to power the display, which means the smaller battery hopefully won't cause too much difference between the flagship and the Xperia 5 Compact. And I fully expect that battery size to be around 3,400 milliamp hours, or similar to what they used last year, the 3,300 milliamp hour battery. Either way, that combined with Sony's battery efficiency software, we should see pretty good battery life on the Xperia 5 Mark II. So here are some areas that Sony won't need to compromise in: the dual front speakers, the headphone jack, the side mounted fingerprint reader, the Gorilla Glass front and back, the selfie camera, the triple camera array with the Leica coating over the top. That should be the same as the flagship model. And with that said, we'll have those same Sony A9 features like the 20 frames per second burst shooting with full autofocus tracking as well as eye autofocus. So the reality is the only difference I think we're going to see is the size of the screen and the battery size. Everything else probably will be the same as the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II flagship. So inside the Xperia 5 Mark II will also be 4 or maybe 6 gigabytes of RAM, and of course the immense firepower of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 5G system on chip, which is the most powerful processor on the market right now. And the fact that this will be a 5G device means that it will be the world's smallest 5G smartphone in 2020, most likely, unless another company get in there before Sony. It will be probably the smallest 5G phone you can get. So while the phone will support 5G in sub-6 waves, it's unlikely to support the fastest form of 5G, which is millimeter wave. As it's a compact device, it's unlikely there's going to be room inside the chassis for the additional millimeter wave antennas that it would need. And if you really want to get the fastest possible speed on a Sony Xperia device, then what you probably should know about is the Sony Xperia Pro 5G, and I made a video about that. I'll link that at the end of this video. So last year, Sony announced Xperia 5 towards the end of the year and just missed out on Qualcomm's overclocked Snapdragon 855 Plus chipset. So there is a chance, a very small chance, that if Sony time it just right, maybe the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II could have the Snapdragon 865 Plus. There's a very small chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
So long story short, if they can keep all of those flagship specs mentioned earlier in the video and deliver that with inside a frame, which is smaller than anything else on the market probably, I think Sony will have the compact king in 2020. But that's not all, check this out. Word on the street is that Sony will be releasing 2 flagship models towards the end of this year. So will that be a bigger version of the Xperia 5, or could we see a brand new line of smartphones, maybe like a new Ultra range or something like that? Let me know what you guys think that second model will be. So here's the last question for you. If you could pick your perfect color and finish for the Sony Xperia 5 Mark II, what would that be? And the reason I ask this is because it seems like Sony really struggles with their color schemes and making their phones stand out in a unique way. So maybe if you guys leave your comments below, Sony might just read it and do something special with the Mark II. Who knows? Could happen. And if you ask me what I would like, I think this matted frosted finish that Huawei have done this year on the P40 Pro is probably the nicest back that I've seen on any phone for a long time. It's not too flashy, it's not a fingerprint magnet, and it's not slippery. Something like this would be perfect. So if you guys want to check out the Sony Xperia Pro 5G, there is a thumbnail on screen right now, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't be late.
The rest is quite simple, really. Word has been leaked via the underworld grapevine